Now, within a marriage, every sacrament, let me back up, every sacrament has a physical sign of an invisible reality where the grace flows. So baptism is the water. That is the physical sign of the cleansing of our original sin. Marriage, the physical sign is the conjugal intercourse. The sacrament of marriage is not valid until it is consummated. After the vows have been proclaimed on the wedding day, at some point the couple must consummate the marriage or it's not a valid marriage. You must have this physical sign for the wedding vows to become flesh. So, if married life is a sacramental sign, if this spousal analogy we've been talking about is the apex of all the sacramental signs, we might say that conjugal intercourse is the sign of that sign. And so, one of the most sacred things in this world is that conjugal intercourse. And I've said throughout this series, if you ever want to know what is most sacred to God, look at what is most violently profaned in the world. And at the very top of that list is sex and human sexuality. Think of all the ways that it is misused, abused, used as a weapon, used as a monetary exchange. All the ways that the human body and soul are degraded with using the sexual act in the opposite way that God intends for us. But when we use it in the right way, it can become the soul of the married life. It can become a way to be intimate not only with each other, but including the Holy Spirit and as a center of the marriage. And the sexual act is so holy. That's why it's at the very center of the spousal analogy. And that's why the purification of lust is so important, so that it can have the true nature that it deserves, the nature of holiness. Look at quote 5. The exchange of consent is only a sign of the coming to be of marriage. Without the consummation of marriage is not yet constituted in its full reality. In fact, the words themselves, I take you as my wife, as my husband, can only be fulfilled by conjugal intercourse. With conjugal intercourse, we pass to the reality that corresponds to these words. Both the one and the other element are important with regard to the structure of the sacramental sign. So it all comes down to that. So John Paul II, when he's talking about this, he introduces a concept here. He says, we are prophets with our bodies. A prophet is a what? Messenger, I think somebody said it. A messenger who speaks God's truth. So if we're a prophet with our body, we can speak God's truth with our bodies, or we can lie with our bodies. And so we're called to speak the truth of God's love as a self-gift with our bodies in the communion of persons. But when we don't do that, we lie with our bodies. So rape is a way of lying with your body. Human trafficking, lying with your body all the time, and profiting off of human persons for money, using them in a sexual way. Those are lies of the body. So what about being a prophet of the body for truth of the body? So when we show God's love as a self-gift through our bodies, we're telling that truth. But when we violate God's plan for our bodies, we are telling a lie of the body. If you look at quote 6, in the spousal analogy of the prophets, it is the body itself that speaks. It speaks with its masculinity or femininity. It speaks with the mysterious language of the personal gift. It speaks both in the language of faithfulness, that is of love, and in the language of conjugal unfaithfulness, that is of adultery. So the truth of the body would be a self-gift. The lie would be of violating faithfulness or of adultery. Quote 7. For every language, the categories of truth and untruth or falsity are essential for it. In the text of the prophets, the body tells the truth through the faithfulness and conjugal love And when it commits adultery, it tells a lie. It commits falsehood. So joy and profound inner harmony come to married life only when the ongoing dialogue of the language of the body is honest. When spouses are true prophets. So only when the husband and the wife are speaking the truth of the body can true joy exist in the relationship. And this goes as well for non-marriage relationships, a boyfriend and a girlfriend, a fiancé relationship. Only when they're speaking the truth can there be true joy. Now the world has distorted this because the world might say, well, if you really love me, then you'll show me by having sex with me. But that's a lie of the body. What's missing there? If you're not married, there's something missing when you choose to be intimate with somebody. What's missing?
Respect.
Okay, respect. What else?
Commitment.
Commitment, right. The commitment of the marriage vows. So you're not speaking the truth of your body. You're giving yourself to somebody, but you're only giving part of yourself to somebody. Because you're still withholding that commitment, and most likely you're withholding your fertility, because most couples who are not married use birth control. And so you're withholding your fertility from the boyfriend or girlfriend or whoever you're sleeping with. And so there's a lie of the body going on there, instead of fully being free and telling the truth of the body. So why do so many relationships end up with heartbreak, devastation? It's because they say with their lips, I love you, but they don't follow through with their bodies. They're not really loving fully with their bodies. They're only loving halfway. It's a half-truth with their bodies. They're lying with part of their bodies. So, everybody with me? Does that make sense? All right. Look at quote 8. One can speak of moral good and evil in the sexual relationship based on whether the couple gives to their union the character of the truthful sign. If you want to know what is too far, then you can speak of moral good and evil if you're telling a lie with your body. Then you know it's too far. If you're telling the truth with your body, that you're giving yourself fully in the right context, then you're not going too far. That's one way to kind of gauge it in your conscience. Quote number 9, the language of the body has clear-cut meanings, all of which are programmed in a comprehensive way in conjugal consent. For example, to the question, are you ready to accept children lovingly from God? The man and the woman answer yes. And that is part of the Catholic vows of marriage, right? So openness to fertility. So again, John Paul II would say yes to this question. Is it even possible to live up to these lofty callings in a world dominated by concupiscence? And our world is dominated by lust and concupiscence. It's a fallen world. And even more so now than maybe 50, 60, 70 years ago. Or even 10 years ago. John Paul II said it's still possible because at the end of the day, Jesus has conquered all sin. And so when we invest ourselves with Christ, when we have a relationship with Him, it is possible to overcome concupiscence. And we don't have to be afraid in this journey. The power of Christ's redemption to transform our hearts, our ethos, which is our subjective moral values, our attitudes and our desires, makes it possible. But that's what it's going to take. It's not an exterior thing that we need to do. Prayer is good, going to church, that's all part of it. But it's an interior transformation. And that's the gospel message, is that He wants us to transform our hearts. John Paul II then meditates upon the Song of Songs. Everybody knows the Song of Songs, right? This hugely erotic love poem right in the middle of the Bible. Okay? Why? So the Bible, God wants to marry us. It starts with a marriage. In the middle, there's a hugely erotic marriage. And then at the end, there's a marriage between Jesus, the bridegroom, and the church, His bride, in Revelation for eternity. So throughout the whole Bible, it's this wedding theme between God and his people. John Paul II is quick to dismiss scholars who disembody the Song of Songs, seeing it only as a spiritual allegory of God's love. He says it's very sensual and physical, that the lovers see, hear, feel, smell, and even taste each other. Christopher Wells told the story of his son who was looking at a sunset one day. And he turned to Christopher and he said, "Dad, that sunset is so beautiful. I just want to eat it." And Christopher's like, "I get it. When we see something delicious or beautiful or amazing and it's in front of us, like those snacks back there, we just want to eat them." Okay? So with all of our senses, whether it's smell, taste, that's why kissing, okay, with our beloved is so powerful, because it's like we want to eat them. Okay? And the Eucharist, why Jesus gives us that gift, so we can actually consume him and be one with him. It all fits together. We're going to talk about the liturgy in just a few minutes. So if you look at quote 11. In the integral view, attraction toward the body is attraction toward the other person. In addition, love unleashes a special experience of the beautiful, which focuses on what is visible, although at the same time it involves the entire person. The experience of beauty gives rise to a mutual pleasure. So, John Paul II uses a few terms to describe this type of true love for another person. He says, in the beginning, when we're attracted to somebody, we have these, quote, raw materials of love. All of us have these attractions toward others, emotions, urges, and desires that initially draw us to certain individuals. And those are the raw materials of love. But just like if you were building a house, I don't know how to build a house by myself. We need a master builder to show us how to handle these raw materials in order to build a house on a sturdy foundation. So if we rush out and give in and indulge all these raw materials of love in the wrong way, we're going to build a very poorly constructed house on an unsturdy foundation, and later it's going to collapse. Why so many relationships actually fall apart. Because people don't take the time to build a sturdy foundation and a good house with the master builder's help, who is Jesus. So John Paul II calls us to be a watchman over the hidden springs of our hearts, to take our time to really go through the journey with whatever person that we might be in love with, or we might want to date, or ultimately when we're married, to continue to purify our desires, our thoughts, and our urges. Because love, according to John Paul II, he defines it as willing the good of the other. Love is willing the good of the other. So if we really say, honey, I love you, then what we mean by that is I want what's best for you. And that's true for any spousal relationship. It's also true for any family relationship. And it's true for any friendship, father-son, father-daughter, any of those relationships. Sometimes what's best for somebody is not what they want, right? Which is why the Catholic Church, unfortunately, teaches certain things about morality that are tough for people to hear. Because Jesus has revealed certain things that are best for us. And we don't like them a lot of times because they're not easy to do. But love is willing the good of the other, not what's worst for each other. And so we need to be aware of that.